essentially four survival archetypes.
Hmm.
And the survival archetypes are universal. We all have them inside of us. And the reason we have them is they're our survival mechanisms, right? So these were identified by Caroline Myss. The four archetypes are the child, the victim, the saboteur, and the prostitute, right? So the child is your inner child, right? We all have an inner child, and there's a light and shadow side to all these archetypes. So the light side of the child is your playfulness, your beginner's mind, your curiosity, your lightness and your ability to see everything with kind of fresh eyes and beginner's mind. But the shadow side of the child is dependency, outsourcing responsibility, instead of being childlike, being childish, constantly projecting the mother and father archetype onto others, for them to take
Yeah.
care of you. So that's the shadow side of the child archetype. The victim archetype is the one that's there to protect us from being victimized, right? So there was some point in our life where we felt unsafe, we felt threatened, and we felt like someone or something there was a boundary being crossed, right? So that gives
Yeah.
birth to our inner victim. There's something inside of you that says, I'm a victim here.
Mm.
So as soon as that happens, you create a victim archetype, which is there to protect you from any situation in which you might be a victim, in which you might become victimized. The light side is setting boundaries, right? The light side is acknowledging when you are a victim and you set a boundary or you take action, you make a change, you get yourself out of that situation. That's the light side.
Mhm.
That's the empowered victim. The shadow side is not being a victim, but playing the victim as a way of getting certain emotional needs met, right? The victim is the one that plays this powerless role, paradoxically, as a way of gaining power and control,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
for example, when I was a child, my dad's a physician. He's an orthopedic physician. And he wasn't very like emotionally connected when I was growing up. He
Mhm.
was a great provider, but not on like an emotional level. But I remember anytime I was in pain or injured, my mom would take me to his office and I would get so much love and attention from him, from his nurses, partners. You're like the doctor's
Mhm.
son kind of
Yeah.
thing. And there was something inside of me that says, oh, when I'm in pain, I get more love from dad.
Mm.
Right. So there's a part of me that says when I'm a victim, I can manipulate circumstances and get my emotional needs met for my father. Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that sets up the victim archetype that says, okay, I can use pain and illness, this powerless role, as a way of feeling a sense of power and control because I can manipulate circumstances to get certain needs met. Right.
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of people use the victim archetype to hold on to illness, to hold on to pain, disease, etc., as
Mhm.
a way of getting certain needs met. And there's a term for that. It's called secondary gain. And secondary
Yes.
gain is where you benefit from pain. And until you actually see more benefit in healing than you do in the pathology, you're not actually going to heal.
Mhm.
Right. And the victim
Yeah.
archetype is very often the part of us that has a lot of investment in that. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
We get more empathy when we're a victim. We get more compassion from people. We feel taken care of sometimes. And there's a part of us that, is still trying to get those needs met. So there's the victim archetype.
Mhm.
The prostitute is the archetype of self-compromise and negotiation,
Mm.
right? So if you think about a prostitute is someone that sells themselves for some sort of financial gain, some sort of security, and it's usually rooted in survival, something to do with physical survival. That's what the prostitute's really focused on. It's always trying to ensure some guarantee, but sometimes at the expense of your own values, your own
Mm.
self-worth,
Mhm.
your own self-esteem, your own integrity. It could be like I value organic food, but Monsanto is paying me $5 million a year to work for them. Right. So I accept it for the guaranteed paycheck, the guaranteed security, but at the expense of my own values and integrity. Right. So that's an example of the prostitute archetype. It could show up as just like people pleasing. You know, people pleasing is I'm ensuring a guaranteed emotional response by being pleasing to them, by being who I think they want me to be or need me to be. That's an expression of the prostitute archetype. Or saying yes to everything, right? Not having the self-worth to say no. You know, I remember like when I was a child, I was like, I don't know, 10, 11 years old. My mom would give me, say she would give me $10 to go to the movies and ice cream with some friends. And I would come home and she would ask me for change and I would have none. And the reason for that was because I would either buy my friends movie tickets or I would buy their snacks for them. And at the time, I just thought I was like being a good friend. It's like, oh, I'm being generous. I'm being, you know, a good friend. But as I started to explore these archetypes and going back to the root of it, I realized I was buying their loyalty.
Wow.
I was buying an insurance policy because I didn't have the self-worth and self-esteem to feel like they would just want to be friends with me just for me. So let me buy this guarantee. That's the prostitute. So that's my prostitute at 10 years old, just coming out like without even me being aware of it. So then the saboteur is the last one. The saboteur is the archetype of obviously self-sabotage, but what it really relates to is it's our relationship with truth, right? The saboteur is the one that's always trying to protect you from truth, right? It could be the truth that you don't enjoy your job, the truth that you're not happy in a certain relationship. There's some truth that you don't want to face. So the saboteur steps in with patterns of self-sabotage to protect you from that truth, right? And it could be just speaking your truth. There could be a fear of like, oh my gosh, if I speak my truth, everything in my life's going to change. If I step into my power, everything in my life's going to change. Like, you know, I spent 30 years of my life as a chronic people pleaser. And then all of a sudden I start saying no to things, or I start setting boundaries with people. And all of a sudden people are like, what the hell happened to Greg? Like, I liked the old version of him better, right? Because he was helping me get my needs met. But now he's like setting boundaries with me and saying no. And like, so the saboteur in me knows that when you step into your power or your truth, shit hits the fan. Like your life gets turned upside down.
Yeah.
So the saboteur is protecting you from the inconvenience of that. It's protecting you from the inconvenience of truth and the inconvenience of your own power. Because it knows that once you do that, everything changes and your life is never the same. So the survival archetypes are there to help you survive, not thrive. So that's why they're the 4 most common roadblocks in the healing process. You know, if you want to ask yourself the question, which this has been like the driving force of me exploring these archetypes, is the question why people don't heal. Well, these are the 4 most common reasons.